Voilà. Impec. Bon. Et bah, du coup, on se trouve sur un nouveau jeu. Je peux jouer soit manette, soit clavier souris. Je pense que je jouais clavier souris, comme vous pouvez le constater. J'ai joué souris. Commencer le jeu, paramètres. On va aller voir dans les paramètres. C'est chelou la souris par contre. Après, je pense que champ de vision. Inverser le Y, vous activez. Vibration. On va mettre avec parce que c'est des ennemis, au moins on le sait. Langue français. Afficher le sous-titre. Activé. Voilà, comme ça c'est plutôt pas mal. Ouais, j'aime bien quand c'est bien noir, comme ça on voit bien. Afficher le... Bon, à mon avis sur des trucs c'est... Afficher les noms d'objets. Les noms d'objets. En grand... Afficher les fenêtres colorées. Afficher les avertissements de contenu. Réduire les mouvements. Mode de déplacement automatique. Non. Réinitialiser les paramètres ou effacer les données. Effacer les données de sauvegarde. Est-ce que c'est marqué sauvegarder? Donc là si je fais... Enfin, je vais prendre la manette pour que ce soit plus rapide pour voir si ça a tout bien mémorisé. Ouais, ok. Des crédits c'est quoi? Ok. Bon, à mon avis c'est parti. Alors, je sais pas si je peux jouer clavier souris, hein. Première fois que j'essaye.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for...
Moi j'ai appuyé. Hein. Ok, donc faut que je trouve les touches. Et pour regarder à gauche, derrière et tout. Ouais, bah jeu clavier souris, c'est pas que ça se fait pas, mais ça va être casse-couille. Du coup, par contre la sensibilité, waouh, elle est violente. Sensibilité de la caméra, ouais. Champ de vision. Non là c'est trop calme. Ah putain merde. On va se faire. En fait la caméra ils savent pas faire un entre-deux. Ouais, là c'est déjà pas mal. Un bouton F1.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Ok.
Stanley went around. No matter how hard Stanley looked, he couldn't find a trace of his co-workers.
Un ordinateur. Ah. Encore un ordinateur. Ah, il est allumé lui. Frérot, c'est quoi ton ordi? C'est. La tour, elle va exploser là. Je pense qu'il faut éteindre tous les écrans. Oh putain. T'imagines en vrai, t'as une pause temporaire.
Stanley clicked on literally every single door in the office because he doesn't pick up well on cues from his environment.
Faut trouver des clés.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Je pense que c'est le truc. Je vais aller à
This
droite
was
parce
not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it.
Non, fermé. Fermé. Ça doit être là la salle.
Yes, truly a room worth admiring. It had really been worth the detour after all, just to spend a few moments here in this immaculate, beautifully constructed room. Stanley simply stood here, drinking it all in.
Cafetière.
But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open
Moi
door on
j'avance.
his
Hein.
left.
À mon avis, c'est au début, c'est le tout début du jeu. Oh putain, il y a 2 pièces. Soit je fais celle là-bas, soit celle-ci qui est immense. On va juste faire un truc. Vérifier celle-là, celle-là. Voilà. Elle me tente bien celle-là quand même. Hein.
Stanley was so bad at following
t'es-
directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago. Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, but in his eagerness to prove that he is in control of the story and no one gets to tell him what to do, Stanley leapt from the platform and plunged to his death. Good job, Stanley. Everyone thinks you are very powerful.
En gros, il faut pas sauter, il faut rester sur la plateforme. Ok. Bah, au moins, du coup, je peux aller voir la salle.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean?
Donc tout ça, je l'ai fait. Je l'ai fait. Attends, il y a des écrans allumés là. Hop. Alors, je sais pas s'il faut les éteindre. Hein. Moi, je sais que on peut, donc j'en profite. Ok, j'en souviens de là. Là, j'avais pris à droite, c'était à prendre à gauche.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
Wesh. Et le truc projecteur? Il est à l'autre bout de la table, non? Ah, il est en haut.
Stanley stepped into the broom closet, but there was nothing here, so he turned around and got back on track. There was nothing here. No choice to make, no path to follow, just an empty broom closet. No reason to still be here. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
La logique de sortir, c'est de passer vers le bas. Plus on descend, plus j'ai de chances de finir en bas.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might. All of his co-workers were gone.
Ah merde.
What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room.
En gros, il fallait
Perhaps
pas que je
somebody missed a
maintienne
memo.
X. Oh là là. Bon.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. Yet there was not a single person here either.
C'est juste
Feeling a
flippant.
wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Et là ici, je vais prendre le temps de marquer avertissement de contenu. Cette section invoque le thème du souci. J'aurais juste une oreillette, c'est un screamer.
All because he believed everyone had vanished. His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all. None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For
Mes
example,
frères,
why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming, he yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground. Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought.
j'ai l'impression d'avoir
He thought
passé.
it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams. The truth was that, of course, this was not a dream.
Il n'y a plus la
How could
voiture.
it be? Was Stanley simply
Il
deceiving
n'y a plus la
himself,
voiture.
believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take
Là, il y a la voiture.
responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, He knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this
Je sais
was
pas
in
pourquoi,
fact
mais
a
je sens le
dream.
gros
Did the
screamer
voice not
arriver
seem
ou
flow
une
to make the
connerie de ce
magical
genre, tu
stars
vois.
just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control. That this was
Je
a
vais essayer à
dream.
partir de la voiture de le
So
faire
he
à
closed
l'envers.
his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up.
Ah, il se passe
He
quelque chose.
felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine.
Je sens le screamer arriver, mais je vous jure.
I am okay.
Je vous jure, c'est un screamer, je change de jeu. C'est bien, je vois pas de chaussures.
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black. This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
Mais c'est quoi ce jeu de merde?
Mariella woke up on a day like any
Je pense que les gars, on va basculer
She
sur un autre jeu.
rose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work.
What the fuck?
But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments, she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day. The very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Le problème c'est 427. J'ai l'impression de me retrouver toujours dans le même bureau. Toujours. Tu peux tout essayer, impossible.
Stanley had never seen the office this
Oh,
brightly
non.
lit. Was it a sign of something? He hoped it was. He hoped very much that it was. When Stanley
Bon,
came
nous on
to a
était à
set
la
of
gauche,
two
donc là on
open
va aller
doors,
à...
he entered
Enfin,
the
après à
door
gauche, je
on
crois
his
qu'il y a des escaliers. Bon, allez, on va aller à
This
droite
was
pour
not the
changer.
correct way to the meeting room, and
On va aller
Stanley
à
knew it
droite.
perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. Wow, yes, this room. But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open
Là, je
door
m'en
on
souviens, il y
his
avait deux
left.
portes, soit là-bas, soit là. On va aller
And so
là.
he detoured through the maintenance section, walked straight ahead to the opposite door, and got back on track.
Ça, c'est pour aller en bas.
Yet there was not a single person here
Mais
either.
ouais.
Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's. Coming to a staircase, Stanley
On va monter
walked
parce qu'en bas,
upstairs to
on
his
connaît,
boss's
hein.
office.
En plus, je me vois même pas dans le reflet du miroir, c'est...
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this, what dark secret was being held from him. What he could not have known was that the keypad behind the boss's desk guarded the terrible truth that his boss had been keeping from him. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number.
Faut que je trouve le code. 2845.
But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this. Yet incredibly, by simply pushing random buttons on the keypad, Stanley happened to input the correct code by sheer luck. Amazing. He stepped into the newly opened passageway.
Ouais, ce genre de jeu, il faut vraiment être attentif. Donc là, tu as un bouton, toujours descendre. Ça m'intéresse pas. Je vais bien voir jusque... Bon, bah, je vois qu'il n'y a que cette solution. Et je déteste ça, les ascenseurs.
Descending deeper into the building, Stanley realized he felt a bit peculiar. It was a stirring of emotion in his chest, as though he felt more free to think for himself, to question the
Je crois que la grille est de ce côté.
Why did he feel this now?
La technique, c'est de rester collé à la scène
Never
bestiale.
occurred to him. This question would not go unanswered for long.
What?
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
Sortie au centre de contrôle. Centre de contrôle, on va aller. Déjà, on a été repéré.
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out? Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building, Stanley's co-workers. The lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing.
Il est immense le jeu. Il y a plus de 596 PS.
This mind control facility, it was too horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this time? Was this the only reason he was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to accept it blindly? No. He refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control? Never. It was unthinkable. Wasn't it? Was it even possible? Had he truly spent his entire life utterly blind to the world? But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions. Happy, or sad, or content. Walking, eating, working. All of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he would dismantle the controls once and for all.
Alimentation du bâtiment.
blackness and a rising chill of uncertainty. Was it over? Yes! He had won! He had defeated the machine, unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away. And yet, even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him. For it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do, or how to feel. Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth knowing. Stanley stepped through the open door. Stanley felt the cool breeze upon his skin, the feeling of liberation, the immense possibility of the new path before him. This was exactly the way, right now, that things were meant to happen. And Stanley was happy.
Terminer le jeu. Trophée obtenu. J'ai terminé le jeu. Abusé. J'ai vraiment fini le jeu en fait. Donc voilà, c'était la fin de ce jeu. Trouver la sortie. Donc je pense qu'il y avait plusieurs possibilités. Donc on va refaire un dernier petit passage à la con. En fait c'est toujours la même chose. C'est juste plusieurs possibilités différentes. Du style par exemple, bah là forcément tout est fermé donc on passe par là. Et par exemple là, soit vous allez à gauche, soit vous allez à droite. Donc nous on va aller à droite parce que il y a une petite endroit où j'aimerais bien quand même aller voir. Je sais pas si vous en souvenez. Donc là c'est soit vous allez tout droit, soit vous allez à gauche. À gauche c'était là où il y avait tour de contrôle et tout le bordel. Et là, il y avait le fameux ascenseur où je suis tombé. Donc là, il faut rester sur la plateforme. Voilà, je pense que dehors des caméras, il y a sur des caméras. Voilà, doit y être. Ouais, c'est en place.
Someone you've forgotten about. Please. Stop trying to make every decision by yourself. Now, I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for her. This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself. To put your work aside. To let her back into your life.
Quoi, il y a plusieurs possibilités. Moi, je les fais toutes, c'est bon.
That's her, Stanley.
Écran blanc.
Oh, Stanley, is that you? Hold on, sweetie. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm just pulling the bread out of the oven. All right. Okay, there we go. All right, now, I want you to come in and tell me all about your day.
Gotcha. Oh, come on. Did you actually think you had a loving wife who'd want to commit their life to you? I'm trying to make a point here, Stanley. I'm trying to get you to see something. Come inside. Let me show you what's really going on here. This is a very sad story about the death of a man named Stanley. Stanley is quite a boring fellow. He has a job that demands nothing of him, and every button that he pushes is a reminder of the inconsequential nature of his existence. Look at him there, pushing buttons, doing exactly what he's told to do. Now he's pushing a button. Now he's eating lunch. Now he's going home. now he's coming back to work. One might even feel sorry for him, except that he's chosen this life. But in his mind, he can go on fantastic adventures. From behind his desk, Stanley dreamed of wild expeditions into the unknown, fantastic discoveries of new lands. It was wonderful. And each day that he returned to work was a reminder that none of it
En gros,
would
je suis
ever
coincé
happen
avec
to
elle.
him. And so he began to fantasize about his own job. First, he imagined that one
Frère, j'ai l'impression que c'est un... C'est vrai qu'on connu sur Black Ops 3 à l'époque, tuer toute... Enfin, pas tuer, mais faire la map Newton, vous dégommez des têtes. Vous devez jouer soit 1, 2, 3 soleils, soit vous jouez, et vous courez après, quoi. Bah, c'est ça. Veuillez appuyer sur le carré pour passer du temps.
So, he went further. He imagined that he came to 2 open doors and that he could go through either. At last, choice. It barely even mattered what lay behind each door. The mere thought that his decisions would mean something was almost too wonderful to behold.
Pourquoi il y a ce fauteuil en plein milieu aussi?
As he wandered through this fantasy world, he began to fill it with many possible paths
Il y avait pas un
and
lavabo là?
destinations. Down one path lay an enormous round room with monitors and mind controls. And down another was a yellow line that weaved in many directions. And down another was a game with a baby. And he called it the Stanley Parable. It was such a wonderful fantasy, and so in his head he relived it again, and then again, and again, over and over, wishing beyond hope that it would never end, that he might always feel this free. Surely there's an answer down some new path, mustn't there be? Perhaps if he played just one more time. But there is no answer. How could there possibly be? In reality, all he's doing is pushing the same buttons he always has. Nothing has changed.
Ah
The longer
putain,
he
je
spends
sais,
here, the more invested he gets.
je sais
The
où on va
more he
atterrir.
forgets which life is the real one. And I'm trying to tell him this, that in this world he can
En haut, à
never
chaque
be
fois, tout ça, ça va
anything but an
s'améliorer.
observer. That as long as he remains here, he's slowly
Ça c'est la vraie heure, ça je crois en plus. Il va être bientôt... Il va être midi.
Here, watch this. Stanley, the next time the screen
Ça
asks
c'est la vraie
you to push a
heure.
button, do not do it. You see? Can he just not hear me? How can I tell him in a way that he'll understand that every second he remains
Ah ouais, c'est le type d'écran qu'on avait vu, le petit bureau, le numéro.
How can I get him to see what I see? How can I make him look at himself?
Voilà.
I suppose I can't, not in the way I want him to. But I don't make the rules. I simply play to my intended purpose, the same as Stanley. We're not so different, I suppose. I'll try once more to convey all this to him. I'm compelled to. I must. Perhaps, well, maybe this time
J'ai trouvé la sortie au bout de 2 ou 3 essais, hein. Je dis ça, je dis rien.
And I tried again.
Veuillez mourir.
Stanley pushed a button.
Veuillez
And I tried again.
mourir.
And Stanley pushed a button. And I tried.
En gros, faut recommencer. Et voilà. Et si vous regardez bien, c'est bien le bureau, tout comme c'était, avec le numéro, le tableau et l'heure qui était là. Juste la pendule qui a légèrement changé. Et voilà, mais j'en suis sûr si on attend midi. Il est 33. Vous allez voir que quand il va être midi, l'aiguille va être sur midi. C'est le seul truc qui est bien, c'est que tu peux mettre la vraie heure. Ça va énorme. Ah non. Il y en a une là. Ah bah si, c'est ça, c'est ça. Si, c'est ça. Ah merde, ça a fermé. C'est notre horloge. Ah ouais, non, c'est pas la vraie heure. Non, c'est pas la vraie heure du tout. Bon allez. J'essaie un dernier truc.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Mais je crois que j'ai fait toutes les possibilités. Hein.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Ah ouais, mais c'est là où on vient. Ah non, c'est là où je suis pas allé. Putain, je suis monté vraiment haut alors. Hein. Ah mais je reviens de là. Ah. Les frères, à un moment donné, ouvrent les portes, non? Eh bah putain, heureusement que les ascenseurs sont pas aussi longs dans la vraie vie. Hein. Je crois que c'est un troll. Hein. Ils ont abusé sur le temps. Bah allez. J'ai fait un retour. J'ai testé le jeu. J'ai réussi à le finir. Je sais pas comment. Et puis bon bah aller sur un autre jeu. Il est pas terrible en vrai. Il est pas terrible. Pas du tout terrible. Mais je vais lancer un autre jeu. Allez, c'est parti.